can get someone out of a unsafe situation, and that's fantastic. But if you're not working with them to long-term just restore hope, restore dignity, restore a sense of self and personhood, like that's where the real change happens.
Tulsa Talks is the podcast that is inspiring people to have everyday meaningful conversations to gain perspective and help the world.
What company do you work with?
So I work for a nonprofit called The Spring. We are here in Tulsa. We're an organization that serves people who have been affected by domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and stalking. So, and I'll sort of give the pitch of how we do that, if that's okay, which is we have three kind of avenues that we offer services to people. One is our emergency crisis shelter here in the Tulsa area, which is for people who are, if you're actively fleeing an unsafe situation, like you don't have a safe place to sleep tonight, we want you to come in the shelter, provide safety and refuge, just give you a place to stay.
Give me an idea of what that shelter looks like. Is that a bed in a room, or is that like cots in a huge...
Yeah, so we have a shelter in the Tulsa metro area. It's a confidential location, but it used to be a medical facility from the Salvation Army. It's a building that's over 100 years old. So it's perfectly set up. We have rooms, we have a bed for you. We have your own space, or sometimes you share.
With one other person?
With one other person. Or if you're a family, we'll keep you together. So, mothers coming in with their kids, or sometimes dads coming in with their kids, stay together in a room because we have different sizes. And we try to make it for however long you're with us feel like home. We're going to give you everything. We're going to give you clothing. We're going to give you fresh bedding. We're going to give you all the necessities that you need for however long you're seeking shelter with us, to have a little space that feels like home.
And how long is the longest you've seen anybody stay in that emergency room?
I don't know the longest we've ever seen. It tends to be a 120-day program is kind of our idea. So that you can really have an opportunity to kind of, first of all, catch your breath. And then we'll work with you. Our frontline workers we call them advocates, and they're going to work with you to create a hope plan. They're going to work with you to get housing afterwards. We offer legal aid services through Legal Aid Oklahoma, free of charge to the people who come, so that they can, if they're dealing with custody issues, say you need a divorce from an abuser, say you just need someone to come to court with you and stand with you, like we offer that as well. So during those 120 days when you're with us, like we're going to try to get you a foundation of security and safety and stability before sending you out.
So if somebody is being abused or trafficked and they find a way out, they can come with their children to your facility, and on an emergency basis, ideally you will have a room open? So
we will need space, and we talk about a little bit before we started the statistics in Oklahoma. Space is going to be limited sometimes, because depending on kind of what study you look at, Oklahoma right now ranks either number 1 or somewhere in the top 3 in the nation for instances of domestic violence. So as heartbreaking as it is, we're full most of the time.
Okay.
But we always encourage people, that changes day to day. That changes sometimes hours to hour as people are leaving, as they're finding places to go. So keep calling, just keep calling, because we're going to do our best to find a space for you. And we also, we triage calls by lethality. So those people who are, we have a survey that will give you a questionnaire of like assessing your danger. And if you're in a place right now where we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow because you're in a really dangerous situation, like we need to get you out of there, and you go to the top of the list, and we're going to make it work. So.
Okay. So that's number 1. What's number 2 that you guys offer? Yeah.
So we do what's called non-residential services, which would be for those people who have a place to stay, sometimes a safe place, sometimes not. Like we have non-residential clients who are staying with their abusers, but still need the services that we offer. So you need case management, you need legal aid, you need mental health care, which is something we offer at the shelter. But you're doing it, either you're visiting the shelter when you can, or sometimes we do it virtually, like over Zoom and over video calls. So that would be our non-residential services. And then the third avenue, which we're really excited about, and we just opened this year, is what we're calling transitional living. So we bought a property just a couple of miles from the shelter. That's kind of a next step for people. So it's longer term. I mentioned that the shelter was 120-day program. This is up to 18 months. So if you come to the shelter, but you don't have a place to go, you need that next step. And we've seen that. We can talk a little bit about like why that's such a necessity. It gives you an on-ramp to build some life skills and to build some foundations before you're on your own again. So, because we've seen people, we've wanted to do transitional living for years and years, because oftentimes a survivor can come to our shelter. They can create a hope plan. They can feel good about where they're at. But if you don't have a place to go, sometimes the situation is you either go back to your abuser or you're homeless. And so our advocates can tell you heartbreaking stories about people that we see over and over and over again, because they just don't, it's a cycle. You come seek safety. You don't have a place to go, so you end up back with your abuser, and then you start the cycle over again. So transitional living is an opportunity for people to really break that. And it's much more programmatic. We're working with people to build job skills, to seek either employment or education, parenting skills, money management, just things that you need to be on your own that a lot of times survivors of abuse have not had a chance to learn or have had taken from them. And so we're really, really excited about what transitional living is going to mean for us at the spring.
How many beds do you have in your 120-day program?
So we have about 55 right now. We are renovating the shelter right now to move all of the non-essential people like me out. And then we're going to get about 25 more beds, hopefully by the end of the year.
So roughly 80 by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's needed. So we're really, really excited.
It's amazing how many people don't know how frequent this happens. Mm-hmm. How bad the situation is out of what people would call living normally. Mm-hmm. Share a little bit about those statistics with us, if you would, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I think of when I hear the statistic, that Oklahoma is number one in the nation. I think 1 in 4 women have probably, if I'm remembering right, and don't quote me on that, but 1 in 4 women have experienced some form of intimate partner violence. What that makes me think of is just like, I know people who are going through this. People in my church are going through this. People that I see at Walmart are going through this. And so it like you said, it can easily become a stigma almost of, well, that doesn't happen here. That doesn't happen in my church. That doesn't happen in my neighborhood. And the reality is it does. Like it affects all kinds of, that's one thing when we go out and do trainings or education, like there is no class of people that is immune from this. Like it's happening to everyone, every salary bracket, every neighborhood, until like it's happening. And until we acknowledge that, like hiding it is not going to make anything better. Not talking about it is not going to solve it. We need to bring it out into the light. We need to let people know what we're dealing with as a state, because that's the only way we're going to make progress.
These people that come to you, are they only dealing with physical violence, or is it also emotional?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a variety of things. Like I said, we do triage based on lethality. So we're going to emphasize the people who need safety, who need physical safety. But yeah, I mean, there's a cycle of, when we all go through training, even non-essential, non-frontline workers like me, about just violence. And there's a wheel of what they call the power and control wheel. And it has all kinds of things that some you might think of, like threats and physical violence and sexual violence, but some things that you might not think of just putting someone down all the time. Financial control, like, hey, I don't have access to my checking account or my money. So there's all, one of the things we teach is that like abusers are intentional in how they are controlling people. And there's all kinds of ways that they can do that. You can control them through the children. Control someone through threatening pets. I mean, that's one of the reasons we have a pet kennel on site, so that people can bring their dogs and their cats with it. Like
Threatening pets. So you get mad at your spouse and you threaten to take it out on the pets?
You threaten to take it out on the pets, or what we've seen in the past is, well, you can't leave me because if you leave me, I'm going to hurt the dog. And of course, like, you know, our dogs and our cats, they're members of the family. Like,
Sure. Yeah. We have 3 dogs and 3 cats, and 2 that are outside that come up occasionally, and we give them a little food. So we are very pet friendly at my house, and they are like our children.
Exactly. Yeah. My wife and I have 2 cats. We like them most of the time. They like us some of the time, but yeah, like I can't imagine making that decision of getting myself to safety, but I'm going to have to leave my pet. Like, so we want to, there's all kinds of ways that abusers exercise that power and control over people. And it's pretty horrifying.
Most people, when they think of domestic violence and controller, manipulator, just not good relationship, they think of the woman being in danger. And when they talk about human trafficking, they talk about women. 99% of the time, plus probably, our minds go to women.
Right.
Do men ever come seeking your help?
They do, yes. And I think that even from how we describe ourselves, for a long time, we were a women's shelter. And sometimes people still call us that. And we have to be very intentional in saying, you know, we're going to serve anyone who needs help. And so, yes, that includes men. We have victims who come in from both kind of pools of people, if you will. So there's men who have been victim of domestic violence. There's men who come in with their children. Just, you know, we wouldn't think of it that way, but a husband and his children are escaping an abusive situation at home. And we have men who also are victims of human trafficking. And so, yeah, it's about raising awareness too. And there's certainly a stigma, I would say, with that.
Yeah.
We talk about
man up, right?
Right. Like, you know, why are you, you know, whatever.
What kind of man are you if you are getting abused at your house?
And so we have to, it's something we need to talk about and bring into the light, just like everything else.
Do you try to help people with counseling, marriage counseling, maybe behavior modification? Do you help the person that's being abusive?
So there are programs that do that. That is not our
not lane. Your focus. But you can refer people. We
can refer people. I forget the name of the organization, but we have partnerships. So if someone's interested, you know, email us, call us, and we can make those recommendations. But we are very much victim focused, survivor focused. That's who we're going to work with. Even to the extent of, and I'll mention this because I think it's interesting and a lot of people don't think about it. We have advocates and frontline workers who go on like operations with the TPD. So let's say if there's some sort of human trafficking operation, we're going to bring a trafficker to justice, recover victims. Our people are on site offering advocacy for victims, even at the point of the crime. You know, we'll be in there. We have a great relationship with the TPD Vice unit. So from the moment of sort of being rescued, for lack of a better word, to the moment of you have found restoration, like we want to be with you on that journey. And that's kind of our main focus as opposed to working with the abusers.
Yeah. When you are not in your realm, you know, it's kind of peripheral thing to most people that abuse does happen, but they don't think about it very often.
Yeah.
How many organizations are you aware of in the Tulsa area that do what you do?
Not many. So there's us, DIVIS, Domestic Violence Intervention Services. Obviously, it works with victims of domestic violence. That's the big one that we talk to a lot. There's a lot of educational organizations that talk about either violence or trafficking. A21, I would reference. There's a home for victims of trafficking in Oklahoma City called the Dragonfly Home that we have a great relationship with. But, it's one of those things where you can kind of count them on one hand, the organizations who are doing what we do.
So let's do quick math. 1 in 4 people are abused at some point in their life.
Something like that.
And there's 1 million people in the greater Tulsa area or the Tulsa metro area. So that means 250,000 people have experienced this at some point in their life. And there are a couple hundred beds in Tulsa.
Maybe a couple hundred beds, yeah.
And a few organizations that are actually trying to help. Seems like limited resources for a big situation.
Yes, I would very much agree with that. And for a long time, it was limited resources even from state funding. They have rectified that in recent years with legislation that gives a little more funding to domestic violence service providers. But it has been, for a very long time, something that was kind of, let's not talk about it. If maybe it'll go away. And obviously that's not going to work. So,
yeah, sweep it under the rug until we can do something about it.
Right. So, yeah.
How long have you guys been doing what you do?
So we have been some form of our ministry for 45 years. This is our 45th anniversary. We're actually going to have a celebration later in the year for that.
That's older than you, right?
That's much older than me. I have not been there for much older than.
I mean, much older than you are. Than you've been on the earth?
Yeah, absolutely. And most of our staff, we have a pretty young staff, so we kind of feel like we have taken up the torch from those who came before us and laid the foundation for some really exciting work. Because we are growing and we're expanding. We launched this new program, and we feel very blessed to have the history that we have and the people that laid that foundation. A lot of people in the ministry, a lot of churches that have come alongside and supported us. So, we're very grateful for that.
Why did you join this movement? How does it align with you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell sort of a little bit about my story. I'm a writer, communications, English major kind of person. And for a long time, I was working in marketing. There was an organization called Water's Edge in Oklahoma City that is a Christian organization, and they're a financial services organization, which sounds odd, but they sort of connect people who are passionate about giving to ministries that they might be interested in. So it's a really cool opportunity. And they had a magazine that I worked on, and The Spring was one of their clients. And so I had thought for a very long time, I love the work that we're doing at Water's Edge. I love connecting people who have resources with ministries that need them. But I very much wanted to be on the front lines. They were sort of an umbrella organization, a support role, and I wanted to kind of jump into the fray, for lack of a better word. And so when I heard about The Spring as our client, and I heard about this position that had opened, my role that I'm in now, just kind of jumped at the chance. And this will be a little bit of an oversimplification of sort of why it meshes with my personal. I have always just hated bullies, hated people who have not hated people, hated the fact that some people take advantage of other people, hurt other people for no other reason really than that they can and that they have power in a certain situation. And so the opportunity to be a part of helping people, even in my own small way, because I'm not working on the front lines with these people. I'm not a case manager. I'm not an advocate. But even the small role that I have in helping some of these people find restoration and hope is incredibly gratifying to me. And that word is something that's very important. We have a little tagline that's empower, rescue, restore. That's why it's meaningful to me, is because you can get someone out of a unsafe situation, and that's fantastic. But if you're not working with them to long-term just restore hope restore dignity, restore a sense of self and personhood, like that's where the real change happens. That's where we can kind of break those cycles like we talked about earlier. And so that's the part that really appeals to me and that I feel really blessed to be able to be a part of.
You said something about things happening in your church.
Mm-hmm.
You also said something about being blessed, restoration. You've used a lot of words that align with faith.
Mm-hmm.
What does faith mean to you?
So, I mean, I am absolutely a believer, a follower of Christ, and that has been, I mean, that's a very long story sort of about my testimony and kind of how that's affected me. But yes, absolutely. I would not.
You were raised in a Christian home?
I was raised in a Christian home. Both my parents work full-time in ministry in some capacity. My dad was a missionary kid. I went to Bible school for a year in college because I just sort of, we always used to joke that it was kind of the family business. I just kind of assumed that's what we do. You know, we go to Bible school and we join the ministry.
Yeah.
And so, but that makes it sound like it, you know, it was perfunctory and it was kind of something that I just did. That's not at all how I feel. Like, it is absolutely the reason I'm here at the Spring. The reason I was at Water's Edge is because we were working in a ministry capacity. We were trying to bring kingdom come. And the Spring is a faith-based organization. We were birthed out of the Baptist church, and we still maintain a lot of really good relationships with churches, have a lot of church partners. And I know, so I can say, you know, I would not be there if we were not Christ-focused. And I know that probably 80%, 90% of the staff would not be there if it was not a Christ-focused ministry. So it's very powerful to see that side of things, how the Lord is moving. And we say all the time, I have a coworker, and I apologize for going on and on.
No, you're not going on and on. That's why you're here, is for us to learn what you know.
Yeah.
And be able to shine light on a subject that most people sweep under the rug.
Mm-hmm. There's a colleague I have at the Spring who says this all the time, and I've sort of taken it as to heart. It's just that the work we do is so hard that I don't know how anyone could do it if they don't have that faith foundation. I don't know how you could come at this work without knowing that true restoration comes from Christ and comes from a relationship with the Lord. Or just knowing that the Lord wins in the end. Like, there's some dark stories, you know, that happen when you're working with these situations. And so I don't know how you would approach it any other way.
I do pick on my guests from time to time, and I am all about being led by the Spirit and functioning from a higher perspective. One of my sayings is, when we get over the me-isms and the we-isms, we can live from the I am perspective. Mm-hmm. So I am all about Christianity and seeing things through the eyes of love. Mm-hmm. But how do you think God allows these people to be in those situations for you to help them?
Yeah, it's the problem of evil question.
With faith.
Mm-hmm.
With faith, knowing that God loves and He's set this in motion through people's choices. We live on a fallen world, all of that. And I am trying to open a gate to be reasonable here with that question.
Yeah.
But with faith, a lot of people would probably think the faith movement, living a Christian life, you know, I am mad at God because He allows this to happen. Mm-hmm. But you're there to help them take that next step into being in a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's an incredibly difficult question that I think a lot of smarter people than I have tried to tackle. For me, there's a couple of ways I can take it. One is just a question of sovereignty. And, if I believe, which I do, that there is a being who's all-knowing, all-powerful, who has created everything for his purposes, then that's enough for me. I don't understand what he's doing all of the time. I don't understand why, when I'm at my desk and, I see a family walk by and there's, a 3 and a 4-year-old walking by with their mom, and I know the reason why they're here, what they've been through. I don't understand that. I hate that. I wish it didn't happen. But I know that he's in control and that he's working everything towards an ultimate purpose that is much higher than anything I could understand. And that sounds a little bit like a cop-out, but you kind of just have. He's
that is the way you release it.
Yeah.
That is the way you take your place.
Mm-hmm. You can control what you can control, and you really do. If you're going to have this thing called faith, you really have to have faith and know that you're not going to understand everything that happens. And I also look to the scriptures. There's so many situations where so many stories where if you pause at a certain moment, you would think, how can this end this is terrible. How can this end any way that's positive? How can this go towards something that God would want it to go to? And he has a way of being able to turn those situations around. So you just kind of got to hope for that and know that sometimes.
If Jesus was hung on a cross and that was the end of the story.
Yeah. I think of Jesus. I think of, Moses in the desert after killing a man, Joseph in prison. Like, there's so many situations where you just got to keep trusting and hoping that God's going to turn it around.
Do you guys ever have people released from the hospital that have been abused come to you?
We do, and that's actually one of the ways that people can get referred to us is at the hospital, because when you go, you get these intake questions that are screening you for domestic violence, screening you for human trafficking. So we do, yeah, and we have sometimes people who, again, we're working at the shelter right now, so we see our guests who are sort of, you can tell that they've been hurt. They've sort of bear the marks physically on their bodies. So yeah, that happens absolutely, and it is heartbreaking. And we see it.
What about the people that don't have as major of physical marks, but they can't live in that environment anymore? Mm-hmm. You see some of that as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think every situation is unique. Every survivor's story is going to be unique. But we absolutely see that. And I think that's where mental health care plays a huge role. That's one of the reasons that we provide that for our guests. Because there are, and even, with the people who are suffering physically as well, there's going to be long-term mental effects of abuse that you have to confront and work through. And that's why I like that word restoration, is because it's a long-term process. It's not a quick fix. Yeah.
It would seem like a lot of people that are in abusive situations are in abusive situations maybe because they had something inside themselves that wasn't whole that allowed that abusive situation to exist, to me. And so maybe the first step into restoration is removing yourself from that, but then that counseling can help people realize why they ever entered that relationship.
Yeah.
And have you, do you deal with counselors some? You're around them on the peripheral?
Yeah, so I know, and I will, her name is Priscilla. We have a partnership with Grand Mental Health. They send somebody to come in, a great Oklahoma.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be meeting a homeless lady that today at 1:00 to bring her over to Grand.
Mm-hmm. So we love them, and Priscilla is her name, who comes to the shelter. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's absolutely right what you said. Like when we say, I think I mentioned something earlier, like restoring a sense of self.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you're in an abusive situation, or you're not willing to leave, or you've let it go because you don't have that sense of, maybe you don't believe you're worth anything. Maybe you don't, maybe I deserve this. All that junk that sort of the enemy can send. And so, getting a proper sense of who you are and what you deserve and just who you were created to be as an individual, that's a huge, I think, first step for a lot of people.
Yeah. But I've always been around this.
Right.
But I've never been okay. Mm-hmm. This is the life that I have. You guys can help them see life differently as part of what y'all do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. And that is heartbreaking because you see it generationally too. Like, obviously there's a huge correlation between children who are in a home where there is violence and then growing up to either be victims or perpetrators of violence themselves. So it's a challenge when you're dealing with that sort of generational trauma, but that's what we hope to do. Yeah, that's what we're trying.
I see a wedding ring on your hand. How long have you been married?
So we celebrated 7 years in May.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How old are you?
I'm 28.
So you got married when you were 21?
Got married at the end of our junior year in college, yeah. So we are...
Same age, roughly?
Yep, she's a month younger than I am. So
Kids?
We have a son, a 2.5-year-old son, and then we are actually expecting our second in August.
Congrats.
So a little girl on the way. So we are very excited about that.
How do you and your wife... Let me start over. Most people get emotionally engaged in a long-term relationship. Mm. That's the hope, right? Mm-hmm. Is to have great love, support, and encouragement, because everybody needs to be seen, heard, and appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what husband and wife do at its core, is that, and have children and have a good life. Mm-hmm. Whatever that looks like, whatever vein you fit into. How do you guys navigate through challenges, if you have any? Do you guys ever have challenges?
Oh, yes, of course. We have lots of challenges.
Disagreements about how something should be done or how something was done to a certain degree?
I think so. I think I would point to, because, we've been married for 7 years, like I said. We had a kid 2.5 years ago. That transition was very difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's difficult for everyone.
Yeah. Before my wife and I became pregnant with our daughter, I refer to that as our single married years.
Right. Yes, 100%. And so I think that was a huge challenge for us, was navigating, what does this new phase look like? And we sometimes had different ideas about, I can't think of a specific example, but just transitioning from that phase of life to, well, now everything is about our child, which is great. And now, 2.5 years in, I wouldn't have it any other way. But that was really challenging at first.
Yeah. Good thing to have something come through your life, to have something common in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you guys met, you were in college.
So we actually met when we were kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we went to the same elementary school. Didn't start dating until college, but we knew each other that whole time. So
went to the same school, through the same school system the whole time.
Yeah, my mom worked. We went to a school in Bartlesville, a Christian school in Bartlesville. My mom worked there, and her dad was our English teacher in high school. So they both worked. Our families knew each other. We grew up in the same swimming in the same circles.
Yeah, that's kind of a rarity, right?
Yeah, it feels rare. I wouldn't have it any other way, just because, there's no part of our lives that we don't really know. We can make...
How boring is that, though, right?
Well, maybe some people would think that. We don't, because we're kind of boring people. but like, we can make a joke about, oh, remember so-and-so in high school? And it's like, well, yeah, I remember him. I was there, so-and-so in middle school. Yeah, I was there. We have the same inside jokes. We know the same. We really enjoy that. I really enjoy that. I won't speak for her, but, and so that was, I think, part of it too, is that we had an idea, I think, of who we were, and you change when you get married, and you grow, I'm not the same person at 28 than I was at 20. I won't be the same person at 35 that I am now. So like that also was interesting of, oh, well, I thought I married this person and I did, but now they're becoming this other person. How do we navigate that? We're constantly changing. You change when you become a parent, all kinds of things. So it's never become boring because there's so much just constant life change.
You live in the Tulsa area now?
We live in Owasso, yeah.
It's still north side. Your family still lives in the Bartlesville area?
My family lives in Bartlesville. My dad works for an organization in Bartlesville called Voice of the Martyrs, which is a Christian organization. And my mom worked at a high school until just recently. And actually, she also just started at Voice of the Martyrs. So, yeah, we're up in Bartlesville quite often.
Where do you see yourself and the organization going in the next 5 years? Do you guys have a plan going forward? I know that you're just opening up a long-term housing option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think what we see as an organization is so much need. And we talked about that a little bit. Like, we did the math of here's how many people in Tulsa are probably affected. Here's how many beds there are. There's so much need that we can meet. And so I think at some point, Lord willing, we'd love to replicate our model, expand a little bit, just provide more beds for people who need help. And we don't really know what that looks like yet, but that's where our heart is, I think, as an organization, is growth, not just for the sake of growth, not just because we want to get big and have a lot of employees, but because people need help. So I hope that's where we're moving in 5 years, and I hope to be a part of that in whatever way I can.
What percentage of the people, or do you know what percentage of people that come to you asking for help don't get it because you're at capacity?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, like statistically. I imagine, unfortunately, it's a high number, higher than we want it to be. People who call and need a bed, and we're at max at the moment.
So you're kind of funneling people by need to put them into your program, and some people you just can't help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll do our best to refer them. We have community partners. If it's just a night of shelter that you need, we can refer you to other shelters. But yeah, at the end of the day, we have the beds that we have, and that's kind of our limit. So it's kind of heartbreaking.
I would think it's very heartbreaking for that person that answers the call.
Yes, it is. I cannot imagine a harder job at the Spring than the person who answers the crisis. Our frontline advocates who answer the crisis calls.
Yeah,
they have incredible.
To say no.
To have to say no, and even when you get to say yeah, like how could you not bring that situation into yourself when you're talking to these people on the phone every day? And again, they could tell you stories about a situation
graphic
call that's
details.
made from a closet when you can hear the abuser yelling in the background. Like what they do is just incredibly difficult. And I always tell people, like, the best part of my job is that I get to tell people about what they're doing because they are just amazing. We have an amazing staff.
It's so perplexing to me to even contemplate what it is that you guys do to help, and that your hands are tied by capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you guys have the limited capacity that you do have? You're expanding,
Mm-hmm.
but why?
Well, I think there's a lack of awareness that we need to rectify, because I think this is one of those issues that when people hear about it and they realize, because if you tell them what you told them right there, people need help and we don't have enough beds. People want to get involved. Like it's an issue that when you stare it in the face, it's very difficult to walk away from and say, well, I can't give to that. I can't volunteer my time. I can't do something. So we need to raise community awareness. And we just need to expand. Yeah. Like I said, we need more shelters. We need more transitional living facilities. We need more resources for those non-residential clients that need help. Yeah.
I don't know how to do a lot of the ideas that come into me. But it breaks my heart to see evil. And that's what we're doing here, is trying to shine light on evil and fight evil with love. It breaks my heart as well for those people that are trafficking, the people that are being abusive, because they're not well. I want to shine light on loving our enemies as well as loving those people that are like us.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I propose that without God's breath, none of us are here. And we touched on it earlier about God's sovereignty and his plan and his way of setting all this stuff into motion. And I propose it's for people like us to love those that are like us and also love those people that are not, because they're broken.
Yeah.
Somebody doesn't want to break somebody else unless they're broken.
Absolutely.
And I propose that with the right love, not being condemning of those people that are broken, but knowing that we were broken all at one time or we wouldn't need a Savior.
Yeah, there but for the grace of God go I. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe God's breath lives through us, and that's me that I'm looking at, unfortunately.
Yeah.
How do you love somebody that is that broken is a good question, and how do you love them right so that they can be transformed?
That is an incredible question, and I know that those programs exist. They used to call them batterers intervention programs. The term batterer is sort of out of date these days, but I mentioned how I can't imagine a harder job than taking a crisis call. That might give that a run for its money, being in one of those programs where you are working with abusers.
Yeah, you realize that you're out of freaking control, and that you don't know what to do or how to be transformed into something, because that's the way that you were raised. That's what your generational curse is.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
I can't imagine either.
Crying out for help, and people are dealing with evil inside themselves, and that can't be comfortable.
Yeah, no. And it's hard, there is love in these relationships too.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we can forget that, especially I think sometimes as we're working with people who've experienced this hurt, we can tend to forget that oftentimes there is genuine love between these people. And dysfunctional love, but it is
love
deeply felt. And, on that power and control wheel I mentioned, that's one of the things is the question of, well, why do you stay? Because I love my spouse, because I want my family to be whole. I don't want this to happen. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
The only thing that we know is that we are here doing what we can, loving people the way that we know to love them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we're doing here?
That's what we're trying to do, yeah. We're trying to show people that they are worth being loved, that they are worth being safe, and that you're, hey, you're created in the image of God, and we want you to experience the fullness of what that means. So, and the situation you're coming from, that some of that fullness is gone, and we want to restore it to your life, bring that restoration.
Whole, healed, and restored.
Empower, rescue, restore. Yep, that's what we're going for.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We are here to help you discover or develop your passions, how you can use them, and why you exist. How can we help you help others better?